McDonald's Canada says it has job openings for some 20,000 people across the country, but in an economy with more than 1 million unfilled jobs, can it attract the staff it needs? Erin Moore is National Director of Human Resources at McDonald's Canada. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks.
So this is a tall order because you know there are all of these unfilled positions. We know that people that were doing service sector jobs, frontline jobs, seem to have found some other work in droves. What is sort of top of mind for you in attracting the people you need to the jobs you have?
Well, at McDonald's, we certainly know that we have a great employment offering. And so whether that's for youth or for mature workers, it really is a great place to work where you can build skills for life and have a great experience making friends at McDonald's.
How important will the wage be in terms of attracting people right now in the face of inflation and everybody's concerns about it? Is that something you're just going to have to be front and center with and be very generous about?
Yeah, as we know, it certainly varies across the country, but that it's an important part of, an overall employment value proposition for candidates. And so, in speaking with our franchisees across the country, we know that in some markets, they need to be, more generous, but, certainly wage is just a part of, an overall package. And, the workplace having flexible schedules is very important to our applicants as well.
Erin, you will be familiar with the term McJob. It's one that's been around for a while. I bet McDonald's doesn't love it. It's come to kind of denote a job that, isn't important or doesn't pay well or doesn't treat its employees well. I'm not exactly sure what's encompassed in that, but we know it's not a great thing. What would your counter be? What does a job at McDonald's offer that is worth signing up for?
Yeah, I think at McDonald's, certainly, you can build skills for life and have great career development opportunities. In fact, our new president and CEO started off in the crew room and started in a restaurant in Aylmer, Quebec. And so, there are plenty of opportunities for people all across the country at McDonald's.
We know young people, of course, need jobs like this, will sign up for jobs like this. As you say, it's part-time in nature, it's flexible. Older people have left the workforce, and it's one that this is a trend that economists are quite concerned about. How do you appeal to that older demographic who they were working with restaurants like yours pre-pandemic? They seem to have opted out. How do you get them back?
Yeah, so certainly that's an important part of our hiring focus. And we know that, for more mature workers, having a flexible schedule that meets their life, whether they just want to work a couple of days a week or whether they're, still looking after kids or even grandchildren, that's certainly an important part of our employment sector and candidate pool.
One of the things that caught our attention about this, Erin, of course, is there's all this talk about recession and slowdown in economic growth. And yet here we are seeing not just McDonald's. Couche-Tard recently this summer said it wanted to hire 25,000 employees and got 160,000 applicants for those jobs. Is this a sign that things might be okay, that actually we shouldn't be as worried as we might be about a recession?
Yeah, certainly I think, we know that McDonald's typically does well in a recession. And so, our announcement that we have 20,000 jobs available, at this time is reflective of the time of the year, certainly for us, as we know, a lot of students are going back to school and others are moving to new communities. But, certainly think there's absolutely good times ahead.
So good to have you, Erin. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Erin Moore is the National Director of Human Resources at McDonald's Canada. Well, with jobs scarce, it should be a time of relative economic power for workers. But in recessions, workers sometimes look to unions to help negotiate a better deal. Well, here's the state of unions in Canada by the numbers. Almost 1/3, or 30.9% of Canadian workers are members of a union, and that is well above most industrialized nations. In America, that number is 10.3%. The biggest chunk of union membership is found in government jobs. 77% of public sector workers are unionized, up 1.8% from 2017. By comparison, just 15.3% of private sector workers are in a union in Canada, and that is down 1.1% from 2017. As for which private sector jobs have the highest membership, healthcare clocks in at 53.6%. While education has the strongest union membership at 74.2%. The weakest representation in the private sector is the 3.3% found in white-collar tech jobs. It is also low among food and hotel workers at just 4.9%. Union membership can seem most attractive when individual actions have less power. That helps explain why Starbucks is facing union certification across its network. But is there another way to give workers bargaining power? And more important, can workers in frontline jobs earn a living wage? Sean O'Grady is an assistant professor at the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University and an expert on industrial relations. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
So, I mean, it's important, I think, for us to note that union membership is strong in this country, but that private sector membership is low. So I guess where I wanted to start with you, Sean, is this should be the moment in the sun for workers. This should be the time when they're most powerful because we've got 1 million unfilled jobs and the labor market is so tight. I don't think most workers would say they feel that way. What are the tools that we could put in place that would give ordinary workers a little bit more clout?
So I think the major tool, the major reform I would suggest for Canadian, the federal and the provincial governments is to introduce sectoral bargaining in Canada. And this is basically to enable workers to negotiate changes in working conditions, not just in the workplace, but among their entire sectors or industries. So for example, retail workers negotiate conditions with employers across the entire sector of retail employers rather than just individual shops. Same could be for fast food workers and you know, McDonald's and Starbucks and all these places organizing together.
One of the things, and I know you've written about this and studied it in the past, other countries actually seem to do better, the Nordic countries, for instance, at making sure some of their frontline workers actually earn a living wage. We haven't done as well, and we discovered in the pandemic, Sean, that a lot of the jobs we consider essential actually don't pay that well, which is a very strange contradiction. What could we be doing differently with things like our grocery store clerks or those folks in the hotels and restaurants who apparently aren't earning enough to be a living wage?
Again, I think the solution is sectoral bargaining. If you were to go to Sweden and compare their retail workers to ours, they're making more than double what ours are making in many instances. And this is really attributable to the fact that if you unionize a single store, you can't negotiate working conditions to be that much greater because you have all this non-union competition that's putting pressure on the unionized store to cut labor costs to match them on prices. But if you negotiate it on the basis of the entire sector, then all the conditions would be the same, and you could keep improving working conditions and build middle-class jobs. That's why you see a lot more middle-class, low-skilled service jobs in Sweden compared to Canada, because they have the tools for sectoral bargaining, and we do not.
So in a weird roundabout way, is the fact that we have higher union representation actually keeping us from moving to that system that might actually be better for all workers because businesses would find themselves on a level playing field. They're not competing with others who don't have those same standards that they're being held to.
Oh, definitely. No, I wouldn't say that at all. If you were to look at Sweden, their union density is considerably higher, particularly in private service sector. Same would go throughout Scandinavian countries and many other European countries that are strong for sectoral bargaining. And the other thing to note too is our unionization rate may be high, but it's not the same type of unions. It's like you have a certification drive and then everybody becomes a union member, but they're all not necessarily participating in union work. Right. So just because density is there doesn't mean all these workers are doing action. Whereas if you go to France, for instance, density is a lot lower, but they're doing stuff. They're all activists. So it makes a big difference.
All right, well, just one quick last question here, Sean. With inflation high and the labor market tight, should workers be able to bargain for higher wages? Would you expect this to be a time of some worker power?
Yes, I would say the economic cycle is to their advantage at the current moment, and workers should be in a position, and I argue should fight for higher wages because the circumstances merit it. Sean, great to have you with us. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Sean O'Grady is an assistant prof at the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. Coming up, as COVID fades into the background, it's worth asking whether we learned lessons that we need to arm us for the next pandemic, or this one if it returns. But first, this. Canadian tennis star Bianca Andreescu made headlines at the U.S. Open this week, but not exactly as her sponsor Nike would have wished. Andreescu asked for a timeout to change out of her Nike dress, which she complained was so bad. Her apology after the fact felt like a line ball, with Nike playing umpire on whether it landed in or out. We're back after this.